was from the kitchen door at the farm to the school. She and Lucy counted those steps many times as they went down there. I forgot the number now. I wish I could remember what the number was. Or maybe Alice Marsh
I never heard that story.
heard that story. She said with a twinkle in her eye, it was so many hundred steps or whatever.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ellie and I wondered which church were they going to?
Pardon?
Do you know which church they were going to?
They were going to this church next door, the Congregational Church.
Yes.
The school, did you say the school was for sale again?
Yes,
So we could see the school across
yes,
Yes.
from Hazel Grover's house?
yes.
Not
It's on
across
the
from the
south
house,
side
but-
of East Wells Road.
When you turn on the East Wells Road, it's on that corner to your left. The farm is on your right. One of the East Wells Road and 133.
Yes.
I think it was Hazel's entry, she said Mama took the train from Rutland. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Where did the train run?
To Granville.
Through Polteny.
The rail.
On the rail trail. So how long would it take to get to Polteny from their house?
From Polteny to their house by
Presumably
horse and
carriage or-
carriage.
yeah.
I don't know.
Probably an hour.
Yeah, so they seem to do it a lot.
And
Yeah.
to Rutland too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lucy and Hazel, I don't know if I caught them in these diary entries, but they drove the horses. I mean, so they were at this young age, at 10 and 14, especially Hazel at 10, she could get the horses, and a wagon and take people to Middletown Springs. One of my favorite stories about Hazel was that when Hazel always drove great big Buicks, and Hazel was small, and when you saw this Buick coming, it looked like a driverless car. But when she turned 100, she drove herself into Rutland and bought a brand new Buick Century. Not to be left behind. Now, I think you two were neighbors, yes?
Yes.
And did you remember Lucy?
Yes. Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And how was that?
It was good. I remember going up there as a little kid because Dad had the dairy farm, and whenever there was cats, and little baby cats, I would put them in a box and I would take them up and show them to the ladies.
Oh.
Like all my kittens.
How old were you around that time?
Oh gosh, well I grew up there from
Okay.
0 to, I knew Hazel right up until she passed away.
Yeah.
So and I'm 53 now, so.
Okay. All right. That gives us some context.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought it was very insightful that the parents, especially Papa, he knew his girls. So he is giving Hazel the wagon things, the goat, the responsibility, and a pair of overalls. I thought, I don't think we ever saw Lucy get a pair of overalls. But Hazel did, and she was a spunky little woman. I always admired that. We got to see her just as we had moved into town, and of course the big Buick, the Buick Century, the driverless car. But I thought that was insightful for him to know that this one is not going to be just an ordinary person, and she's going to just do her own thing. So give her some overalls. Very good.
Yes.
I grew up next door to that farm, so I grew up in that farmhouse, and I knew Hazel and Lucy very well. And I'll always treasure all the memories of that farmhouse and for both of them.
How nice. Anything particular you remember about them or their relationship?
I can't hear you.
Is there anything particular you remembered about either of them or their relationship as sisters?
Actually, Hazel had just come back to retire, so I got to know her at the end of her period. And Lucy I knew for many years. Well, I was born in 34, so consequently I spent a lot of years with them. Yeah, very special.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So, hi, I'm Helen. I live in Tinmouth, and it turns out I'm vaguely related to the Hazel and Lucy. My uncle's first wife was a Grover, and something like Hazel explained it to me once when I moved to Tinmouth in 1994, and so I met Hazel and visited with her several times before she died. And I do want to say that, well, anyway, the relationship is that I think my aunt's great-grandfather was Hazel and Lucy's grandfather's or great-grandfather. Might have been one more relationship there, brother or cousin. I'm not remembering. We had to go back about 3 generations to get a closer relationship, and that side of the family worked it out. My cousin just told me she found the genealogy there. So that was kind of neat when I moved to town, and I said, oh, I'm kind of sort of related to you. So I visited with her several times, which was really neat. And I just want to point out how very remarkable it was. Being a geochemist myself, she was a chemist in the 1920s, which was unusual anyway, but for a woman to be a chemist was just really unusual. And she was very modest about that. But anyway, it was very interesting to meet her.
I could tell a few more details about her educational and professional career. She graduated from Granville High School and went to Middlebury College, class of 1919. And when she graduated, I believe she told me she taught school for a year, which was typical of high school graduates of that time. They would be hired to be in one of these little one-room schools for how long, ever long they might want to. But during that period while she was teaching school, she got a letter from someone who was now working down at Cheney Silk in Connecticut, a factory that made silk thread and made and dyed silk thread from the cocoons of the silk moth that were brought to Connecticut they were shipped from the Orient, from China or somewhere, and they arrived as cocoons, and then they had to be turned into silk. So Hazel was hired as a chemist to keep track of the big vats of chemically treated water that they would put the cocoons in, that then dissolved the natural adhesive that the silkworm put on it, and then you'd end up with this mass of silk thread. And then they had to grab hold of that thread somehow, and she was a little vague about how they did that. But anyway, they pulled that thread out of the vat, and then it was spun into thread. And the thread was then dyed and put onto spools and sold in stores. Cheney Silk was a big name in those days. And it was a community where they had dormitories for the workers, who were mostly women, from the men's dormitories and women's dormitories. But Hazel did not live in a dormitory. She lived in a house with the superintendent of the factory and his family, and also with the company physician, who was there to keep, watch the health of these people. These workers were fed in a cafeteria style and lived together in dormitories and worked regular hours. It was a kind of a planned community. And she stayed there for a few years, and then the physician went to New York City to teach or do something at Columbia University. And she contacted Hazel and said, you ought to consider coming to New York. I know how you could get into graduate school. He saw that she was talented, intelligent, and proficient, and he could see she had a future in manufacturing or something as a chemist. So she went to New York and she applied at the Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute, which to that point had never admitted a woman. She was the first woman to go to the Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute to study advanced chemistry, and it was microscopy again, looking through a microscope. She was then graduated from there, and she was hired by General Foods, which was at that point competing with the Bird's Eye Company to develop frozen food. And she said she spent her entire time there looking through a microscope in a sub-zero room. And she said she was ideally suited to do it, being a Vermonter. She said she simply dressed warmly, had gloves on, and could still manipulate the microscope to look at the crystals in the frozen food to see what the best way to freeze things that could then be thawed out. And the General Foods Corporation is still, I think, still exists. Bird's Eye Corporation still exists, but it was a corporate battle between the two to corner the market on frozen foods, and I think they both were successful. And then in the late 30s or early 40s, I think it was during the Second World War, she left General Foods and went to work for a company in New York City. I think it was in Brooklyn, New York, that was creating a method for sealing jars of canned food. Up to that point, they lined the inside of a metal jar lid with cork. That was the seal. When you canned these things in jars, put the lid on, the cork absorbed some of the liquid and sealed it. But during the Second World War, they couldn't get cork because it came from Portugal, and that was embargoed or controlled by the Germans' military. So they couldn't get that, so they were trying to develop a way of sealing the jars, and they came up with some kind of a plastic material that was lined on the inside of a jar. And to this day, you find a kind of a rubber seal, when you especially canning jars, you know, that rubber seal on a canning jar lid. That company developed something like that. And she spent the rest of her career there at that company and retired in the 1960s. Sometime and came back to Vermont.
Thank you, David.
Now, you're the historian, David. Have you written all this down?
No.
Have you?
I hope it's
No, I
recorded?
hope she had written it down somewhere, but I haven't come across it. I don't know.
Yeah, another
I think that Anya and Ellie, we should thank them again for doing such a great job. But for Anne, they were reading from small journals that were written over a 5-month period, not even a 5-month period. So they don't take up that much room. Well, upstairs in the archives, there's a whole room filled with the archival materials of the Hazel Grover Lucy Blakely collection. Things from their family that lived on that farm from 1791 until about 2000. And they never threw anything out. And all of their diaries for generations and generations are up there. All their letters are up there. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the wealth of information in those archives that are, anyone at the Historical Society, I'm sure, can help anyone else access them to read them sometime, to do interesting research. But I want to take this opportunity to thank Don Blakely, who donated the collection, along with someone called Alice Marsh, who is, I believe, here. Hi, Alice. So thank you very much for that.
Alice, I'm wondering if you would feel comfortable to talk a little bit about Lucy, what her life was. And she lost her husband as quite a young man. Do you feel comfortable about that? I'm not sure I would get everything right.
The only thing I can say about that really is that she lived an exemplary life and was always kind to everyone. I never heard my grandmother say anything bad about anyone, and she never talked about her previous life with her husband. I never heard anything about my grandfather Blakely. He was just not talked about at all. She
How old was he when he died, her husband?
He was in his 30s.
He was in his
They had not been
30s.
married 10 years yet. Their children were young. My father was 5 years old when his father died.
So you can imagine a young woman with 3 small children whose husband has died. And so financially, this would have been a very difficult situation. And that is when, do I have this right, when Lucy moved back to the farmhouse with the children. And later, she started a flower shop in Rutland. And I did notice that, she had taken courses from Cornell. I don't know if you remember in the diary, but Lucy remarks about a bouquet that was at the church that had calla lilies.
Oh, yeah.
And so she did, in her own right, open a business of her own. Does anybody remember her business in Rutland?
I remember it quite well, but the Clark family was close with the Blakely family. And through Bill Clark, in 1961, after I got married, I rented the farm, and I rented it until the time they sold it and all that. So when I first went there, the barns and everything were just like they were probably when Miss Mars, no, you know what I mean, when they got through. See? Now, Donald Blakely had put a new stable in the barn downstairs, but the upstairs, stalls were still in the barn. All the horse stalls were there and all this. And I rented the farm for 40 odd years, so, I knew the Blakely quite well.
And your mother went to college.
Yeah. My mother was in college with Hazel.
Ah, that's right.
And I didn't know that for quite a while, even after Hazel came back from the city. And then I was visiting with her one day, and I said something about my mother went to college at Middlebury, And Hazel's, well, she did, you know what I mean? And come find out, both graduated in 1919. So,
It's a nice, great story. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you both. Thank you, Melissa. And please help yourselves. We don't want anything left. So grab something, take something home. And it's about 5 of 3 now. So I'll say around 5 after 3 for those of you who want to stay. I'll be in the museum. And again, my talk's like less than 10 minutes. So, yes, David.
If you haven't been to the exhibit yet, and you go now, you'll get to see the goat cart that Hazel used, and also photographs of the family in front of the house with the goat cart, Hazel in the goat cart.
Thank you. Okay. Great.